Okay, so this video might be a little bit controversial to anybody that chooses to actually watch it all the way through. Now, the reason being is because Elder Scrolls was recently given a sort of kind of tease from E3 where everybody's kind of jumping back on the Elder Scrolls dick and everybody's kind of giving it a good ride. Um this essay was written almost 2 years ago at this point on my old blog. So this is something I'm kind of digging out of the trash and I'm kind of giving it a little bit of an update. Now, you need to take into account what I wrote was basically assuming we weren't going to get any news about Elder Scrolls 6, and obviously that's not true anymore. But I just wanted to kind of give you that impression before we jumped into the meat of this video. So going forward, every time I say we should not expect anything from Elder Scrolls in this video, bear in mind that now I'm saying it in the sense of like when it's going to physically come out, not really based upon the story and the release, or I should say like the trailer, or the news. Just something I wanted to get out of the way. Without further ado, let's get into the video. You'd think that Todd Howard and Bethesda would be rushing to compete with the likes of Witcher, Dragon Age's recent revival, and more developers creating rich and vibrant medieval RPGs. But instead, much to gamers' chagrin, Bethesda seems to be entirely focused on going the way of Valve and developing remasters, bringing out content that nobody really wants, and just going the VR route. So what exactly is the fate of this much beloved and critically celebrated series? Well, it's not to say there's no hope. We recently got that little teaser trailer out of E3, but I would have to forewarn people, don't expect Elder Scrolls 6 anytime soon. Let us face facts. Most people would consider Elder Scrolls to be a financial doorbuster for the developer and their pockets. And yes, while that is a fair thing to assume, we have to look at the company as a whole and why exactly Bethesda is content to continue riding the success of Skyrim for the next couple of years. Now, first and foremost, Bethesda has other development studios still creating content. We have Wolfenstein, Dishonored, Evil Within, Doom, and Prey to name a few. All of which are confirmed to be series and getting future installments, and all of which have received huge financial and critical success. But it's not even just the games. Bethesda develops games that require a usual budget of around 1 to 10 million depending on if the game releases on time or not. And this may seem like a big number, but consider that most games nowadays have a development budget of close to an average of 20 million. Well, Bethesda is able to do this due to the complete lack of outsourcing that they have. They employed competent programmers, their own game engine, and published their own game releases so they save millions. Now bear in mind, I'm basing this off of older info, and I believe Wolfenstein and Doom both had budgets of around 30 million. That's probably way over, but just keep that in mind. So yes, people naturally want to assume that Bethesda would want the financial success of Elder Scrolls to maintain their studio and create more critical success, but sadly they just do not need it. Especially with Elder Scrolls Online still raking in close to 10 million annually since it released, and having met with some decent critical success and a dedicated fan following, it's keeping Elder Scrolls alive. So this is probably the biggest and most obvious reason people will immediately think of when discussing the future of Elder Scrolls. Bethesda is a big studio and can support multiple creative teams for different releases. But Elder Scrolls is one of the more taxing games that they develop and usually requires the entire team to be working on it, or at the very least about 60% of the teams working on it in their off time. Now, this is hugely doubled in being problematic considering that in order to develop Elder Scrolls 6, they would need the current team managing Elder Scrolls Online to work on it as well. And since Elder Scrolls Online is an MMO with near constant updates, events, and patches, it's difficult to justify pulling them from that project and sticking them on another Elder Scrolls when currently there's just no reason for it. And in reference back to the earlier sentence, they have multiple sequels planned for games that are more fresh in the community's mind. It just makes more sense, or rather it makes no sense to focus the effort when it's not needed, no matter how much they know the community wants a proper Skyrim follow-up. Now here's the reason that I think I'm going to get mostly shit on for bringing up in this conversation, as to why I do not believe Bethesda is focusing on Elder Scrolls, and it's rather simple in my head. They fear that Elder Scrolls will now be viewed as inferior to their rivals. Now think about it. There's three primary reasons that the community has started to stray and look down on Bethesda's flagship series. First, they realize that the storytelling is rather weak in comparison to bigger games. I may be alone in this notion, but for the life of me, I can remember maybe two parts in Skyrim's story that will stick with me and make me remember it fondly, and that was Parthunok's wisdom and the opening dragon attack. See, Skyrim for me was just not cinematic and engaging enough to hold my attention, and I found the story was too meandering and felt really half-assed since they knew probably roughly 90% of the community was never even going to finish it. And then the community received Witcher 2 Assassins of Kings, Dragon Age Inquisition, and Dark Souls 3, all of which held a more cinematically infused story with proper cutscenes, varied voice actors, and incredibly vibrant and rich worlds to explore and conquer. And the reviews from both fans and critics showed just how much they enjoyed these games, and they started to show the flaws in the Elder Scrolls design. And that's not even mentioning the masterpiece that is The Witcher 3. Second reason. The community has just gotten sick of Todd Howard's lack of fan appreciation. Todd Howard used to be a legend amongst the community. You could argue he still is. He was the pinnacle of fan service, always had an engaging E3 presence, and always made the gamers feel cared and loved by the studio. Lately, he kind of just seems to be a mouthpiece, with little to no regard for the content he's essentially in charge of creating. He has repeatedly stated that Elder Scrolls 6 is coming no time soon, that they want to focus on more online content, and that they plan to move more and more into the VR market and develop technology kind of like Valve did. This has led to a big dissension in the ranks of Bethesda's varied and dedicated fan base. They want to be there, and they want to be included, but they can also see the indifference and apathy that has overcome Howard, and they're starting to lose faith. Third, and maybe biggest reason, people are sick and tired of the same game being released every year and literally being ignored by the company. Let's just consider Bethesda's utter disregard for new content. Skyrim was released 6 years ago, and since then has had roughly 6 re-releases, only half of which included the full DLC, and the community has gotten completely sick of it, and frankly, I have as well. Elder Scrolls is considered by many to be a timeless and a game series that will stand the test of time. Now this is purely personal opinion, so if you do not want to have the argument, I would recommend just skipping to the end here. I am of the opinion that Elder Scrolls is a good game and it is worth a playthrough and a spot on your shelf. However, it simply does not stand the test of quality, not only in comparison to itself, but also to its rivals and its counterparts. So yes, Elder Scrolls does 3 things very well. Its music is simply astounding. Its sheer beauty it invokes is tantamount to John Williams and Hans Zimmer at their best. Its literal no hands-holding approach to exploring the world and literally having the freedom to go wherever the hell you want from the get-go is enticing and awesome. It has an extensive lore that once you go down the rabbit hole, it's difficult to get out of. Here comes the harsh part. That is truly the only good parts of Elder Scrolls that have stood the test of time. The combat is ultra light and feels like you're just swinging a stick through the air with no real repercussion and weight. The magic is simple and really does not feel like true magic, except the fire. That shit is fucking awesome. The fire is fucking awesome. And the voice actors are just way overused. Seriously, like every other game character is the same voice actor, repeating the same monotone instructions. The game engine is just showing its age. The vistas are still gorgeous, but the engine is just not standing the test of time. The game is still buggy as all hell. I understand that some people just find the glitches hilarious, but I ended up having to create multiple saves because it kept deleting them. Half the dungeons would break when I tried to beat them, and a near 60% of the NPCs would not react to my quest step qualifications, etc., etc. There is just so much of the game that they could have ironed out and they never did. I mean, Christ, this game had damn near 12 years of development. And that's not even mentioning that outside of the lore, there is just no interesting story to find in Elder Scrolls. And yes, I know I brought that up before. I would say I'm sorry, but honestly, I think people just vastly overpraise this game and ignore its enormous flaws. I enjoy walking around the world and listening to its jaw-dropping atmosphere, But compared to the emotionally charged and well told stories, world building, characterization, lore infused side quests, and excellent, weighty, and fluid combat of games like Witcher, Dragon Age, and Dark Souls, there's just no valid comparison. Elder Scrolls could learn a lot from its fans and rivals, and yet Bethesda's probably never going to release a sixth entry. And if we do, well, we probably got 4 to 6 years until we even get a trailer. Now, obviously, this script was written 2 years ago. We have a trailer now. I love a good fantasy game, and I sincerely hope Bethesda takes the time to develop a true next-gen Elder Scrolls. Me, in my opinion, I'm just not holding my breath.